Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Ask Grit, episode number 18. Every single week, we discuss the questions we got asked each and every week so that it can add some value to you. Today, we have Alo. Welcome, Alo.
Good evening, everyone.
Alo, what have we got this week?
So this week, with the current market and how hot it is, we have a lot of buyers asking potential questions in terms of what they need to consider when buying, and we also have vendors asking some questions what they want to consider prior to selling. So
Sure.
we'll get right into it. First question is, vendors want to know, what do they need to do before putting their house on the market?
What do I need to do? Yeah, so sorry about that. Phone
That's
keeps
okay.
ringing.
Busy.
Yeah, so I mean, when before you put to the market, you got to prep yourself well. It's about all about the presentation, especially on an established market. The better your house looks, better offer you can get.
Mm,
Especially if you're going into auction, styling your home is highly advisable so that it'll attract the buyers who are coming in. So I think preparation is key. There can be minor changes which you were thinking doing but never got it done, but this is the time to do it. For example, recently we did a house and they haven't done the deck or the alfresco.
mm.
It's a large house, but having that alfresco in place by spending that $5,000, $6,000 will add so much of value to the house. So there's little things like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we can definitely provide expertise and advice on that matter, but I think preparation is the key.
Wonderful. So, do you think that now is a good time to sell? And what can vendors do to make their home sell faster and for more money in this current market?
It's the best time to sell, I would say. It's yeah, especially the established market is stinking hot. And what the vendors can do is, I think if you're in the established market, if you want to sell, going into auction is the best way
Mm,
to sell right now. Um, it's the same for apartments as well as houses because there is a deadline for the buyers and there is a sense of urgency.
mm,
There's so much of buyers out there in almost every suburb, starting from Geelong to Officer Pakenham. In
mm,
Melbourne, I'm talking about. So the best way to sell at the moment is auction if you're in the established market.
mm. Yeah, like you said, there are a lot of buyers out there. And at the same time, for vendors that want to sell, there are a lot of agents that they can choose from as well. How can they pick a good agent to sell their house?
Yeah, it's. I mean, like with anything, any decision, they have to do their due diligence on what their track record is, and mainly if they go deep to check what sort of marketing they do to attract the
Mm,
buyers. I think that's an essential part of their due diligence.
mm,
Uh, it's not about simply putting a house on the internet and expecting your buyers to come by and buy your property. There's a lot
mm.
of work to be done if you're really aggressive. So
Yep.
your your due diligence is key. Track record, uh, the marketing plan, and the steps which they undertake to sell it from start to finish, and how to complete the sale,
Mm,
and more importantly, the knowledge and the expertise and advisory from the
mm.
agent, because which will be valuable as a vendor to take their property to the market.
Definitely right. And from the moment that a vendor signs the contract with the agent, how long would it take before that property goes onto the market? And what do the agents do in that time frame, prepping it before it goes onto market?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so once a vendor assigns to an agent, you sign a sales authority, and
Mm,
then the agent will undertake some photography, videography. Uh, if the styling is required, you style the house and then take the required pictures and then advertise on the agreed platforms. And while they're doing that, vendors should be preparing the contract of sale, can be auction or private sale. Based on that, the solicitor has to get involved, prepare the contract of
mm,
sale, make sure it's up to date with the certificates and so forth. And then that way, the agent has a contract to
Yeah.
get any offers if there are. And so then you set up a campaign. The agents will set up a campaign. If it's an auction, put a deadline for the auction date, and then you sell it. You sign contracts and exchange, and then it can be 30, 60, or 90 days based on the negotiations between the vendor and the buyer.
Wonderful, wonderful. And currently, with off-market properties and off-market sales becoming more common, if a vendor is to sell their property off-market, or if they want to sell it off-market, can they still expect to get a great price, or basically the best price that they could have gotten if they were to go on market as well?
Yeah, I don't see a difference. When it's off-market, it's mainly through the networks. It's I think if you can put it to the market in this current condition, that would be the best. But based on the property, if it's a high-end property, there might be opportunities in the off-market space. But the majority of the properties, if you put it to the market, it will definitely sell.
No, definitely, definitely. And this is a question from a lot of the buyers that we're currently getting. What is a cooling off period, and does it vary from state to state?
Yeah, cooling off period is when you sign a contract. There is a cooling off period of 3 days in Victoria, where if you want to pull out, you can pull out. And yes, it does vary from state to state. Some states have a 5-day cooling off period. Majority of the states have a 3-day cooling off period, but it does vary from state to state.
Okay. And in terms of investment property, so what's the benefit of depreciation in an investment property?
Yeah, so from an investment property, you get the short-term benefits as well as long-term benefits, right? And short-term benefits is you can claim some taxes through your tax returns when you have multiple investment properties. And depreciation of the property is something you do. You do a depreciation schedule through a quantity survey for 20, 30 years. And using that, the accountants can get you some returns through your taxes.
Right.
And that will be your main portion of claiming your taxes through investment properties. So depreciation will fall into place, the short-term benefit of the property, where the long-term benefit would be your property appreciation over time.
Wonderful. And in terms of getting a depreciation schedule, is there someone that we can recommend to the owners, or do they have to go and look for that on their own?
Yeah, no, we have multiple quantity surveys who are working with us. We can definitely recommend someone who can get it done pretty quickly. I think especially now, May, June are busy time for them because tax returns are coming up starting July. So that's where people will start asking for depreciation schedules to be done.
Beautiful. And this is coming from some of our current owners that live overseas. They want to know, if they have an investment property and they're living overseas, can they still easily sell that investment property with the tenant still inside? And are there other fees associated with the sale aside from the legal, marketing, and agent commissions?
The first question is whether they can sell it in the local market. Of course they can. It's going to be a normal sale where anybody can buy a property regardless of the owner. In terms of the fees, you get the sales fees, sales commissions, marketing fees. Apart from that, there's nothing else.
Okay, wonderful. And final question that we've got over here is, what is the benefit of having a buyer's agent?
Yeah, buyer's agent. I think it is quite beneficial. Again, most of the buyer's agents have a lot of off-market properties which you can't get hold of, especially the cash flow positive ones. It's mainly through contacts and definitely residential as well as on the commercial space. Having a buyer's agent on your side is definitely beneficial. And just to give an example, I think we acted as a buyer's agent for one of the buyers recently, where they wanted to buy a property, didn't know how to go about auctions, and we were able to advise them and when to stop at auction in terms of bidding. Sometimes it becomes too emotional for the other side of the bidders, and then they keep going, and then as a buyer you have to stick to your budget. So that kind of advisory is important for a buyer. So based on your requirement, yeah, buyer's agent will become handy.
No, that's great. And I think it's a great point that you touched on as well in regards to buyer's agent having those connections with off-market properties.
Correct.
Because I guess some people do sometimes feel like they can just get on realestate.com, similar to what they think a buyer's agent would do.
Yeah.
But I think it's that connection and networking is what really makes the difference.
Yeah. I think we have few more coming in. First one is, I don't have the deposit required for a 10% right now. Does that make sense for me to go for a off the plan property? Yeah, definitely it does. But what I would say is make sure you have the borrowing capacity, probably get a pre-approval, although it doesn't add much value for your property purchase for the off the plan property. You might have to get a pre-approval again. At least it'll give you a peace of mind that you can borrow that much and you're sticking to your price point. And yeah, so you go for off use the deposit you have, go for off the plan property, and then collect as much as you can, and then do the settlement in 1 year or 2 years, or based on your requirement. We have heard so much about Geelong. What is the main driver behind Geelong as an investment destination? Yeah, there's a lot of talk about Geelong, and we truly believe Geelong will be a very, very good investment because the fast rail project between Geelong and Melbourne will happen. It will happen between the next 3 to 5 years. And I think it's going to be a game changer because in another few years' time, if you can travel from Geelong to Melbourne in 35 to say 45 minutes, it's going to be equivalent to you going to Officer or Pakenham or even Berwick on the southeast, or something like Mickleham, Donnybrook in the north. So with the lifestyle in Geelong, people will love it. If you can travel in 45 minutes from Geelong to Melbourne to work, I mean, 95% would of the Melburnians would love Geelong as a place for them to live. Beach is close by. It's a wonderful place. So I think it's it's going to be a definite hotspot. What else have we got? I would like to know your thoughts on Ballarat. Ballarat is another very, very good investment destination. You should not be looking at next 2 years to 3 years, but you should be looking at next 10 to 15 years. Uh, the way it's going, Ballarat, Geelong, Bendigo will become normal suburbs. It won't be regional anymore in 10, 15 years. Things like fast rail projects, when they come in, and if you can travel fast, these will become very, very popular in the years to come. And with the population growth, these will become very normal to people living in Melbourne. Not only that, rental yields in Ballarat is extremely high. It's every property is over 5% rental yield, where you're looking at about 4 to 4.5 in Melbourne in Metro. So if you're looking at the long term, where you should be looking at the long term for property investment, Ballarat is definitely a good spot. It's a mix of questions, Alo. Some vendors, some buyers, investment properties. We have another one. Where can you find dual key properties in Melbourne? Yeah, dual key properties. I mean, not that you cannot find in Melbourne. If you look at Kilo East, Essendon, you get some properties where you can do two properties in one title, but it's going to cost so much more than you doing something in Brisbane. So Brisbane is the place, or Queensland, southeast of Queensland is the place for dual key properties, where if you're doing something in Melbourne in those areas, you're looking at a minimum of 1.5 million as your overall project cost, whereas you can do something below 600,000 in Queensland.
Wow, big difference.
What else have we got? people investing overseas, once you put an initial deposit on off the plan purchase, what happens if you cannot get the finance approval in 1 or 2 years' time? Yeah, I mean, it's always advisable to make sure you can get your finance approved before you embark on a project. Uh, if you cannot settle for whatever reason, either finance or whatever other reason, developer can cancel the contract and forfeit your deposit of 10%. So that would be the worst case scenario. So it's always advisable to make sure you have the borrowing capacity. Excellent. I think that's pretty much for the day. Hello. Thank you so much for sending in those questions. Feel free to ask any other questions. We'll be going live 5:30 every Thursday evening. Feel free to ask any questions. We are on all social media channels. Before we go, just like to remind we are having a virtual property exhibition on the 29th of May. Feel free to get onto any of our social media channels, and you should be able to find the link to register. It's going to be special. You have to check it out. Until next week, be safe and take care.
Bye-bye.